This is the video tutorial for section 5.1 properties of exponent quiz. On number 1 here we have 3 to the 4th times 3 to the 2nd, and what we do when we multiply with exponents, we're going to add our exponents. So that is going to give us 3 and then add the 4 and the 2, so that gives us 3, and we'll go ahead and we'll go 4 plus 2, which is 3 to the 6th power, and that is your answer. On number 2, we have an exponent raised to an exponent. So on this one, anytime you have an exponent raised to an exponent, you're going to multiply those two exponents. So that's going to be 2 to the 4 times 3. And then all I do is I multiply those two exponents, so 4 times 3 is 12. So that is 2 to the 12th. Now move on to number 3. On number 3 we have x to the 3rd divided by x to the 6th. Whenever you're dividing with exponents, you're going to subtract your exponents. And these must have the same base, which are both x. Alright, so we're going to subtract. So I'm going to take the x to the 3rd. You always take the top exponent, which is 3, minus the bottom exponent, which is 6. I subtract those, and that leaves us with x, and 3 minus 6 is a negative 3. Now, since we have a negative exponent here, okay, that's going to end up moving down because we cannot leave a negative exponent. We've got to simplify our negative exponents. And the way we're going to simplify our negative exponents is we're going to move it to the opposite side of the fraction. Since this is not written in fraction form, we know that it must be x to the negative 3rd over 1. Alright, so it's on the top of the fraction. So to simplify it, it moves to the bottom, and when it moves to the bottom, it's going to be 1 over x to the 3rd. And that is your answer for number 3. We'll now move on to number 4. This is 1/2 to the 4th power. The exponent goes to both the 1 and the 2. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite this as 1 to the 4th power over 2 to the 4th power. And if you want, you can go ahead and simplify those. 1 to the 4th would be 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, so that would be 1. And then 2 to the 4th would be 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. And that would be your answer, 1 over 16. And I didn't say that earlier, but on numbers 1 and 2 up there, you could have also simplified those down as well. But that is your answer for number 4. We now move on to number 5. On number 5 was similar to number 4. The exponent goes to both numbers inside the parentheses. We have 3 to the 2nd power, and we have x to the 2nd power. And now we're going to go ahead and work to simplify that out. So 3 squared is 9, and x squared is x squared. If I can get that to work. And that is your answer for number 5. So we have 9x squared. And we now move on to number 6. Number 6 is 12x to the 5th, y to the negative 2nd, z to the 0. That 0 goes to everything inside, okay, and we know that anything to the 0 power is 1. So all of this to the 0 power simplifies down to be 1. And that is your answer for number 6. We now move on to number 7. Alright, we have x's on top and we have x's on bottom, so we've got to simplify both. I'm going to start with the 8 and the 2. All I do when I'm working with the 8 and the 2 is I divide them just like we normally would. Alright, reduce. Alright, so that's going to go 8 divided by 2 is 4 over 1. And then I have x to the 10th over x. Whenever I have x's on division, I subtract my exponents. So I'm going to take 10, and then the x would be 1, so it'll be 10 minus 1. I do the same thing with the y. So that's going to be y, and that's going to be 1 minus 3. I take the top one minus the bottom one. Now I'll go ahead and simplify my exponents. So that's going to be 4 10 minus 1 would be 9. 1 minus 3 would be negative 2. All of that is over 1. Now I cannot leave a negative exponent, so I need to move it to the bottom. So I'm going to take this negative 2, I'm going to take all of this since it has a negative exponent, and I'm going to move it down, because that's the way we simplify the negative exponent. So the 4 is positive exponent, x to the 9th is a positive exponent, so they stay on top. The y to the negative 2 is negative, so it moves to the bottom, and that simplifies the negative exponent to a positive. And that is my answer for number 7. We now move on to number 8. On number 8, we have a fraction times a fraction. So I'm going to do my multiplication since I have all positive exponents. Don't confuse the negative 2 as a negative exponent. That's just a negative 2. Alright, so I'm going to multiply first. When I multiply fractions, I multiply top number times top number, bottom number times bottom number. So when I'm multiplying, I do my numbers just like we normally would. Negative 2 times 2 is a negative 4. And then I have x squared times x. That's going to give us, when I multiply, add my exponents, so that's going to give us 2 plus 1. Alright, so that's what we have on top. Bottom, there's nothing to multiply times the 3, so that's just 3. Nothing to multiply times the x, so it's just x. Then I have y to the 3rd times y to the 1st, so that's going to be 3 plus 1. Alright, so now my next step is go ahead and just simplify my exponents. So that's going to go negative 4. X, and then 2 plus 1 is 3, over 3 x, and then 3 plus 1 for the y is 4. Now I can go ahead and simplify my x's, because I have an x on top and an x on bottom. So that's going to go negative 4 x, and that's going to be 3, and whenever I divide I subtract, so that's going to be 1. So that when I combine the x's there, so I take those two right there, exponent on top is 3, exponent on bottom is 1, so it's 3 minus 1. And then over 3 y to the 4th. And now I'll go ahead and just simplify. So it's going to go negative 4, x 3 minus 1, simplify my exponents, that gives me 2. So that's x squared over 3 y to the 4th, and that is your answer for number 8. We will now move on to number 9. On number 9 we have 5x squared y to the 3rd power and x to the 3rd z over y to the 2nd power. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the exponent. Now remember that exponent goes to everything inside. So I'm going to go 5 to the 3rd power, and then that would be x squared raised to the 3rd power, and then y to the 3rd power. Alright, so that's the first one. Same thing on the next one. That's going to go times, and that's going to go x to the 3rd raised to the 2nd power, z squared, and all of that is over y squared. And those two are multiplied together, just like that. Alright, so now I'm going to simplify my exponents. Alright, so 5 to the 3rd would just be 125. Now, x squared raised to the 3rd, when I have an exponent raised to an exponent, I multiply. So that gives us x to the 6th, and then y to the 3rd. Next one, let's do the same thing, simplify my exponents. I've got x to the 3rd raised to the 2nd. So that's going to be times, and on this one that would give us x to the 6th again. Alright, z squared over y squared. Now to make this a fraction, we'll put that over 1 so we can multiply. So when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across, top times top, bottom times bottom. Alright, nothing to multiply times the 125, so that's going to stay 125. Alright, and then I have x to the 6th times x to the 6th. When I multiply, I add my exponents. It gives us x to the 12th, y times nothing, so it's just y, and then z squared times nothing, so it's z squared. all of that over 1 times y squared is y squared. Now the only thing left to do, move down here, okay, is my y squared. My y and my y squared. So I have this y and y squared right here. Sorry, that should have been y to the third. I lost my third there. So that should be 125 x to the 12th, y to the third, z to the second, all that over the y squared. So when I do this, simplify that down, that's going to go 125 x to the 12th. Now I've got the y to the third over the y squared. So I take the 3 minus the 2, and that gives me 1. And then the z squared. And that is my answer. 125 x to the 12th, y to the first, z squared. And that is your answer for number 9. Now move on to number 10. On number 10, we're just using our properties of exponents. I know whenever all three of these have the same base, they all have base 3. Alright, so I'm going to start with my properties of exponents. I know that when I multiply with exponents, I add my exponents. So this ends up being 3 and 2 plus x equals 3 to the 6th. So I'm looking for the x that will add to 2 to give me 6. So in essence, we have x plus 2 equals 6, and I just solve for the x. So I go minus 2 and minus 2. That cancels, and that leaves us with x equals 4. And that is your answer for number 10. That concludes the video tutorial for quiz section 5.1.